Welcome, everyone. My name is Matthew Rowe, and I'm the CEO of the Campaign for Wool in Canada and its parent organization, the Canadian Wool Council. This year, of course, celebrating 10 years since our patron, His Majesty King Charles III, and Her Majesty Queen Camilla, launched the Campaign for Wool in Canada on a windy pier in Pictou, Nova Scotia. And we've got a really exciting program of activity. This is our first Spinning Our Speakers series since the summer break, and we're just diving right into things, but we've a lot to look forward to in the coming month, in October for Wool Month. There'll be some more information on the different projects that we've been working on, including our 100% Canadian wool rug partnership out in Vancouver, a new Canadian designer capsule collection with Holt Renfrew. We've got special events. We've got new point of sale materials for all of those of you who sell wool. So new branding, new information to be able to educate your consumers on the wonders of wool. We've got two new Fabric of Canada films telling the woolly stories of Canadian wool and the Canadians who transform it. So quite a few things on the docket, and then even some projects that we'll be rolling out a little closer to Christmas. So please stay tuned. But we are here today to hear from a very special speaker. Monica has very strong roots in the industry. I've had the pleasure of working with her at the international level at the International Wool Textile Organization, where she is one of the big movers and shakers. It's always a pleasure to work with her. And I think what's really great about Monica is she gets a view of the wool industry that not a lot of us get to see, because she, in her role working for Woolmark, which, I know this is being recorded, but I often describe Australia as the Saudi Arabia of wool, which I mean in a positive light, and in terms of they've got the most of the good stuff when it comes as wool as a commodity. And so they have a really unique perspective on the industry writ large, and of course are the source of a lot of the fashion wools that we see in stores. But they are also, the work that they do is so important for branding the fiber writ large, and helps to lift up many of the smaller industries like ourselves, with all the research that they invest in, the testing that they do, and the marketing that they invest in, that gives us really a leg up in terms of being able to get our message out to consumers and being able to prove what we already know as supporters. Those of you on this call, you're already converted, but we need to go out and evangelize and convince more of the wonders of wool. And having an organization like Woolmark at the forefront is just so important to be able to achieve that. So without any further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Monica to tell us a bit about her role at Woolmark, her career in wool, and her own affection for the fiber, which we all love. So over to you, Monica.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And yeah, thank you to yourselves, the Campaign for Wool. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And also just really want to commend, the Canadians for an exceptional job that you did last year at the roundtable. You guys really showed up despite the snow, everything, and could really see the passion that everyone has around the industry. So I'm excited to be here to share a bit of my background with you today. But keep up the great work that you guys are doing. So my background starts in Kansas, and it starts on a sheep farm in Kansas, actually, although you'll see from the photos it might look a little bit more like the sheep that you'll find in Canada, and a little less like the sheep that you find in Australia. So it's the company that I work for now. But I grew up with Dorsets, Hampshires, Suffolks, and Shropshires. I grew up showing sheep, and so growing up, I didn't necessarily see the connection to the fashion industry, or even saw it, as a career path. I grew up on a small sheep farm. It's about 160 acres, so unfortunately not big enough, to support a family. My parents both had jobs off of the farm, but as you'll see, I'll kind of stem back to my upbringing in Kansas, and I'm still involved with the sheep farm as much as I possibly can be to this day. You know, a few photos from me showing sheep. You can see the wool quality or maybe lack thereof from the middle photo, and just a little bit of what it looks like where I grew up in Kansas. So I did my undergrad at Kansas State University and I studied fashion design and marketing. I didn't have any intention of going into the wool industry. I think my friends used to joke that I would design clothes for sheep someday. Not quite doing that. Still not sure that sheep should wear clothes. But through my studies, we were fortunate enough that Cotton Incorporated actually sponsored a class, and it was, you know, that kind of spearheaded things for me. Not necessarily that I wanted to focus on cotton, but at Kansas State, where I went to school, we also had a wool judging program. That was through our ag college, and fashion was through the College of Human Ecology at the time. I think the college has changed its name since then, and I can't remember what it is, but. So in doing wool judging, that was when things really kind of started to click for me. So I've got a couple of photos. You know, the bottom photo is of the wool judging team that I competed with, and then I helped coach the following year. And what really kicked things off for me, I was fortunate enough, there's 3 contests that happen in the United States at the collegiate level. And I was fortunate enough to win the last contest that we had. And so I think with that bit of confidence, I decided instead of doing an internship in New York City as I had planned. So I'd always planned I would study abroad in London, and I had done that. And then I would do my internship in New York City, because if you want to work in fashion in the United States, New York City is the place to be, not Kansas. But decided that, maybe this wool thing, had something to it. And so I actually did my internship that we were required to do as the part of the fashion program at Angelo State, or through Texas A. So in San Angelo, Texas, through Texas A&M University. And it was from there I decided to do my master's degree through Angelo State University with my research done through Texas A&M, and worked at the wool research lab that they have in San Angelo, Texas. So started to get a little bit around merino sheep at this point in my career. And through the research that I was able to do, I was able to follow wool through a wool supply chain in the United States into activewear garments. And so this was also something that just kind of it wasn't the early stages of wool and activewear, but it was something that was just starting to come to the forefront. So this was for reference, this was 2013, 2014, when I was doing my master's degree. And as you'll see throughout this presentation, watching that evolve was really incredible, and getting that firsthand knowledge of just understanding how the supply chain worked was really incredible. Throughout my time, so while I was at Angelo State University, I got involved with the IWTO Young Professionals, and don't have a photo of the first group. I think it was actually the first year that I participated in it was, I believe, the second year that they held it. It was in Cape Town, South Africa. And I think there was like 3 or 4 of us young professionals. For anybody who's familiar with the program now, the program regularly is, at capacity every year, and IWTO is constantly working to try to accept as many professionals as they possibly can. So it's been a program that's really grown and thrived. But I thought it's important to, make this connection, that this was something that I started participating early on, and it's really paid dividends for me. So participated as a young professional. I was a master's student in Cape Town and in China, and then oversaw the program actually alongside IWTO up until 2023, where I handed it off. But for any young people on this, it's an amazing program. You get set up with a mentor. At the conference, you also get to engage with your other fellow young professionals, which I think is really important. These are people who I will see at various events throughout the year, and continue to be in contact with. And so just a really great group, and just, yeah, very, very happy to have been involved with it, but it certainly has helped me out immensely with my career. So then after I finished my master's degree, I moved to Montana, and I worked at the other wool research lab that we have in the United States, Montana State. And so in this role, I got to spend a lot of time with wool growers, helping educate on their wool clip, spending a lot of time with shearing crews, as you can see, testing a lot of wool. And so just really spent a lot of time in and out in the industry. Also, as a requirement, they made us shear. I'm not a great shearer, but classing wool keeps your hands soft. I actually miss getting to spend so much time in the wool shed, but was an incredible opportunity and kind of, a great stepping stone for me. I was in Bozeman for a little over a year, but I was itching to get out into the international industry. Unfortunately, an opportunity came along to kind of dip my toes in. So I did a bit of consulting work for BKB and Core Merino. This was all while I was at Montana State University, but I was able to go back to South Africa, again, through connections through IWTO, that I even got to meet the people at BKB and Core Merino, and do a bit of work with them. And then I'll also just point out in the photo, for anybody who doesn't know her, that's Elizabeth von Delden. So she was formerly the Secretary General of IWTO, and is still my colleague to this day. And so I think also just a testament to IWTO and forums like this one, the people that you meet, you'll be surprised, they'll continue to be part of your career. And we still work together to this day at Woolmark. And yeah, I would say decided that I wanted to move abroad. And so this opportunity came up to work for the New Zealand Merino Company. So I moved to Christchurch, New Zealand in 2017. And what an amazing opportunity to work for the New Zealand Merino Company. Again, it's going to link right back to IWTO. For those of you who maybe know Dave Maslin, he was actually one of the mentors that I had as a young professional with IWTO. And so yeah, having that connection, helped springboard me into the international wool industry. Got to meet wool growers from all over New Zealand. I think to this day, the company also does an exceptional job of marketing the fiber. And while they tend to focus obviously on merino wool, they do have a bit of work that they do in the strong wool sector. That's definitely New Zealand's biggest challenge. I know Wright was one of your guests earlier in the year. And she's been an incredible friend and an amazing person who I've learned from throughout the industry. But just an incredible time to be in New Zealand and work for a company that like so many of the wool companies out there are really trying to be at the forefront of innovation. From there, I found myself I headed back to South Africa. An opportunity came up to head back to BKB and work for BKB and Core Merino. So I managed the Core Merino clothing brand for BKB. And then, one of the other things that was happening around the time that I started at BKB was RWS was really just starting to take off. And it was a standard that, while it has its challenges, was particularly well suited for African wool growers. And they saw that as an opportunity to kind of hit the world stage a little bit more than they maybe had in the past. At that point, I rarely heard people talking about South African wool, and that's definitely changed. So that's been one thing that I've noticed, that RWS was particularly useful for them. But with this role, I was also able to get back to my roots of apparel design and that side of things. So managing an apparel brand that was focused on activewear. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm a runner myself, and so it was really exciting to manage an activewear brand and get to wear the product every single day, out running in some of the gorgeous landscapes that they have in South Africa, and really just had an amazing group of colleagues that I'm still close with today. But that ultimately led me, back to the United States and to the role that I'm in now, with the Woolmark Company. So, I've been with Woolmark for just over 2 years now, and my role has even evolved in the 2 years that I've been with the company. So I started out as a business development manager, focusing on sports and performance. I still continue to do that role, but then also undertake sustainability for the region. And so I'll just take a little bit of a deeper dive of what all we're working on in that instance. And so you may have seen earlier this month, we launched our what we're calling our Woolmark Plus roadmap, which includes 13 various initiatives that fall under kind of three main categories: accelerating nature positive production, delivering the circular fiber of choice, and supporting thriving flocks and communities. And really, we just feel that, we need to be looking beyond net zero, and moving towards nature positive. And that means getting outside of a, carbon tunnel vision. I think it's been one of the challenges we've faced, as a wool industry in general, is that we've become so focused on carbon and, not thinking about what are the other positive benefits that come from growing wool and raising sheep, in the lands at the landscape level. And so this has been really exciting to get this launched. I'm actually, as I was talking with Matthew and Lydia, prior to the call, I'm actually in New York City right now. Even though I'm based in Denver, Colorado, I'm here for Climate Week. So really, here to help champion the voices of farmers and actually the growers at the ground level, who are actually, doing the most, to, whether it's around regenerative agriculture, looking after biodiversity. Wool growers are already doing so much. And so we just want to make sure that's heard, that brands understand that consumers understand that, because, really, that's crucial, to see us, head towards a nature positive direction. And the other side of my role is particularly focused, on sports and performance, which ultimately leads back, to wellness. So one thing that I haven't mentioned, but in continuing my involvement with IWTO, last year I was fortunate enough to take over the product wellness working group with IWTO, which just fits beautifully with the sports and performance side of my job. In some ways, sustainability, we've almost, it's been an area that we've been challenged on a lot. So it's almost, we've had to be really defensive. I think we're getting to the point where we don't have to be. But with health and wellness, it's been a side that we've really been able to be on the offensive. There's so many amazing attributes of wool. Already know that it is about reminding people of that. It's about amazing work like the Campaign for Wool is able to do in educating consumers. The same thing that we do, everybody's in the industry. It's there's something for everyone, because we actually just need more people, for more education and, all of these, getting all of this information, out there. But wellness, yeah, it's continuing to be a growing market. It's something that I stay on top of regularly. Just seeing how much it's growing, seeing how much people, care about, their health and whatnot, which is, it's just, really incredible. And I think it really links, in sustainability really strongly. If you don't have a healthy planet, you're not going to have healthy people, and vice versa. And so really the two are inextricably linked. And so it's just been so incredible to be able, to connect the two and, work on behalf of the industry. I think that's the great thing. While I officially represent Australian wool, but through IWTO, and honestly, just my own personal, opinion is that, we're all in this together. So wool is wool for me. So whether it's Canadian wool, whether it's Australian wool, it doesn't matter. As long as, somebody's buying wool, they understand the benefits of it, then I'm personally very happy at the end of the day. And I think, everyone, can back that up. And so it's just, yeah, been really exciting to be part of the industry. I hope this has been useful, but mostly I want to open up and, allow for questions, for everyone. So yeah, I might just say, so yeah, this was a particularly fitting, end photo, I thought. So this was what I wore for Comrades, which is an ultra marathon in South Africa. So that was a core merino top that I wore on the day. But it was interesting. It became a very good talking point throughout the entire run. So much so that there was maybe even one individual who had never seen The Wizard of Oz, so he didn't know what Kansas was. But it helps make, an 87-kilometer race a little more interesting. So thank you all for joining. And yeah, I'd love to open it up for questions.
That's great, Monica. Thank you so much for that presentation. I actually had to hold, as the frequent participants in this call will know, I usually can't be held back from making various puns or jokes. And the Kansas link I was just chomping at the bit, but I didn't want to steal from your presentation. I often do that with our colleague Jane on the call, where I'll steal her best stories in my introduction. So I decided to let it go. But I think it's actually quite apt that you're from Canada, or that you're from Kansas, because I would say that your career has been a bit of a whirlwind in terms of taking you so many different and wonderful places around the world. I'm sure our group will have a lot of questions, but I'll use my chair's privilege to kick things off. So again, for anyone who wants to ask a question, you can put your hand up or pop it in the chat. But for someone on this call who's interested in a career in wool, and would you say that that it is important to travel and take roles in other countries? Is that important to success in the global wool industry?
I say not necessarily. I mean, I'm not a homebody, so I can't always sympathize with the people who are, but I do try my best. If you're somebody like, let's say you're from Canada and you just absolutely love where you're from, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to, physically move to another country. I think getting involved with like an IWTO, is really useful. But even if that's outside of your comfort zone, maybe it's getting involved with, the Campaign for Wool Canada or one of your local organizations. That was really where I started. And like I said, I just had an appetite that was greater for, the wider world. But it's not to say that you can't still, make an impact in your community, because, there's so much happening at so many different levels. So I think at any level you can get involved with, that's within your comfort zone, is just as important as if you get out on the international level.
Lydia, did you want to moderate some of the questions, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks again, Monica, for that response. We have a first question from Jackie. Thank you for sharing your presentation. I also started showing sheep in younger years. When you were showing sheep in Kansas, were you also in a 4-H member? I think your story would be excellent to share with with youth in agriculture, especially in 4-H.
Yeah, so I was involved with 4-H ever since. I think you could start out when you were like, I mean, you could start out as young as you wanted, in open class. Yeah, I was involved with 4-H throughout growing up. I think that's one of the things that actually, when I think back to my childhood, that I was more open to new experiences. I think 4-H was a really great way. And, it doesn't have to be 4-H, maybe it's Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or maybe it's something similar at a young age. I think that's really important because you have to step outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's been something that, it's not always, like I said, it's not always comfortable. It's not always easy. I don't know how many times I've been in the middle of something and I've thought, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But I've always made it out the other side. It's never been life-threatening. So it just may not be comfortable in the moment. So I think organizations like that can be, really, really helpful. So, thankful that I was able to participate, in an organization like that growing up. It's great. So yeah, I highly recommend being involved with that, or for anybody with kids, if those opportunities opportunities exist or something similar, it's a great way to start to get involved.
Anyone else has any questions, please feel free. Oh, Jane has one. Perfect. Please go ahead, Jane.
All right, microphone off, hand down. Monica, I wanna lay a controversial topic on the table for you. Methane emissions. Can you speak to us very briefly on what that means? Is it as problematic as we are led to believe? Should Canada be worried?
In my opinion, Canada shouldn't be worried. Your sheep population isn't as big as Australia's, and the land masses. But so I'll try to make it as brief as possible. And I am not like I'm not a methane specialist. I'm not a life cycle assessment specialist. But from the work that we've done through IWTO, through the Australian Wool Innovation, through the global wool industry as a whole, what we've found is that methane emissions do need to be reduced, but they don't have to be zero. And so I think that's where we're really struggling, because carbon does need to, we do need to be net zero with carbon. Methane actually will never be net zero. As long as there are, that there are animals on the planet, that's not that's going to be the case. There are reductions that need to take place. And so we've looked at it from like a 3-prong approach in Australia, which should be applicable everywhere in the world. It's looking at climate smart farming. So keeping, carbon sequestered in the soil. It's looking at additives, feed additives, that will help reduce the methane emissions that actually come from sheep. And then it's also around efficiency of the property that you're working on. And so those are the 3 key areas that we're looking at. But I think the important thing to note is that it does not need to be zero. And we are actively working with science-based targets in the industry on exactly what that zero, the non-zero actually looks like. So that's what, it's also a matter of watch this space. But from the science and the way that I understand it, it's a problem, but we can find the solutions for it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a slightly related question from Mary Richardson about responsible wool standards. So she's asking, how important do you find the RWS in providing certification of practices and direction to farmers? We see for organic food, for example, that it can become very technical and not always support the most ecological practices. Same with regenerative farming. Thoughts?
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say it's a really good question, and it's challenging. What worked really well in South Africa, might not work very well in a Canadian instance. I think that's one of the challenges that we've seen, or that I've seen globally with like the likes of the RWS standard, is that as much as they have tried to make it applicable around the world, that's really hard. Farming systems are not the same wherever you're at. Regenerative agriculture is going to look different in Canada than it does in Australia, than it does in South Africa. And so I think that's, it goes back to the point of, farmers' voices being heard and really understanding, what works in a context of, a farm in Canada. And that can look different, depending, on where you're at in Canada as well. It's a vast landscape, and it doesn't necessarily look the same, across the entire country. Again, same as what we see in Australia. And so I think that just becomes really important, and recognize that, wool growers actually do tend to, they know what's happening on the ground. And I think that's something that's maybe been lost in some of these standards, because they need to be third-party verified in order for, people to believe you, which is kind of unfortunate, because chances are, a wool grower, a property owner, a property manager, knows pretty well what's actually happening on their farm. They understand, when something's just not right. And that's not just because it didn't rain that year, but also just like, haven't seen this bird, this kind of bird in a while, or, different things like that. It's really, it's one of the challenges that we have with those kinds of standards and things. So they're not a silver bullet, but I think they are necessary.
Yeah, we have another question in the chat about wool processing facilities, for example, scouring. Any thoughts on environmentally friendly systems for the processing stage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's something that we're going to continue to have to look at as an industry, is just making sure, the natural wool fiber itself is an incredible clean green product, but unfortunately to get it to garment form, it takes some processes and whatnot. So one of the biggest challenges or hurdles that we haven't fully been hit with yet, but to make wool washable, it requires for the most part, the most widely used process is a chlorine hair cassette process. And so it's a chemical. And so it's going to be, a challenge that we might end up facing. It's also where, whether it's the likes of IWTO or investment by wool growers back into the supply chain, it's innovation, supply chain innovation is one of the things that we do look at as a business, to understand, what those challenges are going to be, and have people on the ground, have a strong backing of science. So that way, in case that would get banned at some point, that it's something that we're on top of. We try to keep on top of those sorts of things by following the ZDHC, stands for zero discharge and something else. But so looking at, it's something that we do pay attention to. Dyes are another thing. The good thing is that in general, the benefits that we're able to talk about with wool are mostly inherent to the fiber. It's not, a process or something that you're actually having to do to that fiber. So like polyester, for example, if it says it's moisture wicking, that's an extra chemical or a process that they have to do to make it actually act that way. So I think as a fiber, we're sitting in a really amazing position. It doesn't mean that we can just, sit back and just, watch other fibers go through their issues. I think it's still something that we need to be on the forefront on. I pay a lot of attention to that because of, the wellness side of things. I think there's an interesting growing number of research. Obviously, microplastics are a massive problem. And, we're only just starting to see, what the actual adverse health effects that are coming from that. I think they found them in just about every body part. They found them in just about every part of the world, even where there haven't been plastics. And so, it's just, it's an area that we do still have to pay a lot of attention to. And so, yeah, wish I had all the answers as to, what all we need to do, but I think, yeah, just continually investing in science to understand that is going to be crucial.
That's great. Thanks, Monica. While we're waiting for other questions, Matthew and I prepared a couple as well. So you kind of touched upon some of this earlier, but for someone who's looking to build their career in wool, what skills do you think are essential to your role, or what kinds of skills would you recommend people look into developing?
Yeah. So I think just being open-minded, being a continuous learner, it's challenging. I think I would say probably most of the people listening in, have careers, have jobs, something along those lines. It can be really hard to find time to squeeze in, continuous learning and that side of things. But just, I would say really being open-minded. I think finding ways to connect with others. So whether that's physically in person at events, whether it's reaching out to people online through like the likes of LinkedIn or something like that, and just, making connections throughout the industry. So, and just yeah, being open-minded and open to new things. And I would say collaboration I think is huge. I definitely would say I don't have all the answers, and have just been really fortunate enough to meet a lot of incredible people throughout the industry and learn from various stakeholders from around the world.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, and if anyone is interested in the IWTO Young Professional Program, I can leave those links for you in the chat as well. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Or okay, we have one question from Wen. For those people who are keen on spinning, what kind of job opportunity do you see out there?
Yeah, I would say there's job opportunities everywhere. I'll admit the wool supply chain is probably, while I have a decent understanding of it, it's probably the area that I'm least involved with. And I think it was kind of maybe touched on a little bit in terms of wool processing earlier also is, I think there's a need to have it at every level. And so I think it's also just about, figuring out your business and what's that sweet spot for you. So maybe, wool spinning, maybe you're not going to, be the next like Sudvola, for example, or one of, the larger wool spinners in the world. But, maybe you're able to do it on a small scale. I think every level there's, it's needed and it's necessary, and it's figuring out what that sweet spot is for you, and then whether it's just a local market in your community, whether it's a larger market across the whole of Canada, or even global. I think there's so many amazing opportunities and platforms. I think there's it just requires a lot of hard work and effort. So just spanning back, while not on spinning specifically, but building an activewear brand in South Africa, coming in at it with an American mindset was beneficial, but also challenging in a way. The way that I saw the world, the way that e-commerce was a much bigger deal in the United States, in Canada. But also in South Africa, people were much more accustomed to still walking into the store. The price point of a base layer in South Africa was astronomically, like, it's expensive, here too, but it was even more expensive in the eyes of a South African consumer. So they really wanted to see and feel that garment before they bought it. So while I thought my online, e-commerce, oh, we're going to be fine, we're going to hit the road and we're going to be selling product like crazy, didn't quite work the way that I had thought that it would. So I mean, I think just with any stage of the supply chain that you're along, yeah, just be willing to make mistakes, be willing to learn, try to seek out those who are able to, share some advice, and I like, yeah, good luck. Let me know. I'll what you set up. I'll be supportive. I try to be as supportive as possible of the wool industry.
Great, thanks, Monica. Diana, I see that you have your hand up. Would you like to ask your question now?
Thank you very much. My name is Diana Martin. I'm a reporter with Farmtario, which is an Ontario agriculture publication, just so that you know, Monica, everybody else would know. There's a lot of talk about marketing the wool, but in Ontario and Canada in general, wool producers have basically been taught their wool has no value. The Campaign for Wool has been doing an excellent job trying to find niche markets to, sell that wool into. On the flip side of selling your wool and creating a market, how do you change the perception of sheep producers that the wool has value, and how do you present that story to them in a successful way so that you can start feeding that value chain?
When we figure this out, because my dad, so this is something that my dad and I go back and forth with. You saw the kind of sheep that we raise, and our wool is basically worthless. It does always get sold. So growing up, we always used to drop it off. We'd take it to a sheep sale that we would go to, that one of the wool buyers would be at. So I completely understand the challenge that your wool growers are facing. I think it's I suppose, yeah, I would say maybe down the track, maybe in another life. I think that's by far the most, like the biggest and most exciting challenge is for the types of wools that don't seem to have a market for them. So obviously Australian wool is known for its, it's the right length, it's the right thickness, particularly good for apparel, but there's far more coarse wool grown throughout the world and far less uses for it. And so I guess the thing I would say is to try to tell the wool growers to have faith, to stay in it, I hope. I'd like to have a full career in the wool industry. And I'm only in my, mid 30s, so still got a ways to go. And but yeah, I mean, I think that's where the collective comes together. It's educating people. It's educating people on, beyond just your base layer apparel. And I think it's just always trying to seek out new opportunities. So, in this particular instance, so this could be something you could take back. I don't know how far away this technology is, but it's something that's been worked on in various parts of the world. But there's a company here in the United States called Bloom Labs that so you can take wool down to the keratin level. And I'm not a scientist, so I'll try to do this as best as possible. But there's keratin in your nails, in your own hair, in chicken feathers. But I see this as a particularly good opportunity for those kinds of wools if this technology can be scaled. So you can take that type of wool that isn't good enough to put next to your skin, but you can break it down to a similar level that the way polyester can be extruded extruded to create the fiber. But you can do that using the keratin from wool, from what we're currently considering waste wool. So then when you have a fiber that, acts like a polyester, because for most of us who have maybe base layers or work out in activewear, that polyester or that nylon, it just helps give it that extra bit of durability. It'll last a bit longer. It's an unfortunate necessary component to most activewear, especially for certain applications. And so if we're able to actually take this wool and be able to turn it into a fiber that's useful, that can be used next to skin of wool that typically hasn't had a use, I think that's incredible. Then you can have 100% wool base layer, just harnessing the technology in different ways and harnessing the benefits of wool in different ways. This is maybe a little far out. The company's called Bloom Labs. This is not I've only chatted to them once, trying to help them, find feedstock for that type of wool. They are based in the United States, so the bonus is if they're able to scale, they're going to be looking at wool from the US as well as Canada to kind of cut down on international shipping. So sorry for anybody else who's joining internationally. But again, hopefully it's, a technology that can be scaled around the world. I think things like that are really exciting. So I think maybe talking about that to growers is really important, to just say, like, we're working on it. Sounds a little odd to take a wool fiber, out of its current form, but maybe it's needed for some of the meat breeds. I personally still I love eating lamb, and I might think it's a little better coming from like a Hampshire or a Suffolk than it is from a Merino, too. I hope that helps answer your question.
Jane, do you have a comment or a question? Because we also have one in the chat.
The question, I would just, I think Monica's idea of finding diversified uses for the fiber is absolutely wonderful. We don't have to continuously stay in the boxes that we've been given from previous generations. There's a lot we can do with technology. But to speak to Diana's point, what can we do to help encourage, say, Ontario farmers to believe in their wool? One of the things that we noticed in our research with the Campaign for Wool, Canadian Wool Council, is that I feel that a lot of our producers have just been given some myths over the years, and these myths have built naturally. But if we encourage producers to get scientific testing of their wool and to learn more about the genetic crosses of their sheep and what impacts specific crosses might have, that could be signing up for a database like Genovis, where you can track breed crosses and better understand what the outcomes are for your own wool clip. I think that goes a long way to help empower the producers to know what product they're putting on the market. I think scientific testing is the next step that Canadian farmers need to take. That's just my 2 cents.
Jane?
No, I would agree. My master's degree is partially in genetics. I don't use that side of my degree very often, but it is really important.
Okay, we have a question from Tulika, who again thanks you for this great presentation. She works on knitwear side of things with cashmere fibers. And the question is if you could provide some reading recommendations in wool, maybe more career ideas for specifically marketing and research side of things.
Yeah. Trying to have a think of specific wool. A lot of what I've been reading lately has been maybe not necessarily wool specific. I read a really good book called To Dye For, so that kind of got me thinking about dyes in the industry, so that was really interesting. Wool comes out, I also wanted to see if they talked about wool and how it comes out, because for the most part it comes out okay. They did, I don't know if you guys remember this, but because it was 7-8 years ago now, that the airline uniforms, there was a big problem that came out about flight attendants, and that they were uncomfortable. So then of course they're equated, like they just immediately equated it, it's a wool blend, oh, so it's the wool. And that actually wasn't the problem. It's actually the finishes that they're putting on those garments. But then wool, because it's already thought to be an allergen, and some of those negative things, myths, kind of similar to what wool growers might be being fed about their wool quality not being good enough and not having uses for it. It's something to be proactive as an industry on. So that was a really, that was a really good book that wasn't wool specifically. I can, if there's a way, I can maybe find it and add it into the chat after the fact, or add it on LinkedIn. So that was one of the books that I've read recently. Yeah, trying to think of anything wool specific. I'll have to have a think on that. But again, I can, yeah, like I said, I can add it into like the LinkedIn, or maybe to the YouTube where this gets posted. I'll have a think of a few other things that I've read recently that might have a good wool focus.
I just pasted the link to Dye For in the chat, but we'll also leave them in the notes under the recording on YouTube.
Okay, awesome.
Monica, obviously, as I mentioned before, Woolmark, you have the most resources of a wool organization. I know there's still, everyone has their challenges, but sort of sitting from that position, and I know you invest a great deal into R&D. What's coming up on the horizon? What's the next big thing that that Woolmark will be trotting out to help drive demand for wool products?
It's already been launched. I don't know if everybody's seen. I've thought about, but I don't, yeah, in case the video doesn't work. But so we have launched, so what we call our eco campaign. So 2 years ago, you might have seen the video that we came out with of the Olympic sized swimming pool of oil. So the next iteration of that campaign is finally live. It was a long time coming, and it is called Wear Wool Not Waste. And so it's just continuing to drive that education component. So this can be wool from anywhere in the world. This doesn't have to be specific to Australian wool, but basically just driving home that message that basically every polyester garment that has ever been created still exists. And just really getting consumers to think about that and understand that. So there's a really amazing video. Definitely, thanks, Lydia. You've popped in to the chat. I see one of the articles about it. So yeah, that was launched yesterday. And so it's been really exciting to see. I've kind of been watching to see what comes out of it, what are the negative comments, but so far I really haven't seen anything aside from the typical PETA comment. I do have to admit, when it comes to PETA, I do enjoy lamb, but I really like wool, and so a sheep needs to be alive to grow wool. So as far as I'm concerned, happy, healthy sheep are what I want to see. And yeah, that's globally. So I can also link the YouTube video in the chat after the fact. Everybody just actually like, share, comment, really just spread the word. That campaign is meant to be global. It's meant to be about all wool. I really would say that's one thing that has been exciting to see. I feel like as a business, especially with our sustainability strategy, it's been more about bringing all wool together. So yes, recognizing that we do have a lot of resources that we're very fortunate to have, but you know, like, and I could go on, and I know we're about out of time, but as simple as like labeling laws, there's legislation that's happening in Canada and the US. The EU has been the main one that we've been focusing on specifically, not only as our business, but as IWTO as a whole. That's going to affect all of us. And so we are too small of an industry. We all have to come together. We all need to work together. Doesn't matter where all the resources are coming from. I think the most important thing is that we work together. It's not Canadian wool against Australian wool. It's Canadian wool and Australian wool against polyester. Is a much better approach. And so I think yeah, forums like this are great, and yeah, just happy to have been able to shed some light on what I do.
It's great, Monica. Thank you so much.
Oh, Carol, I like that comment. Walk on wool, not waste. Might have to add that in somehow.
Fabulous. Unfortunately, I think we're just out of time now. But so I need to wrap it up. But I want to thank you, Monica, for taking time out of your busy Climate Week schedule to speak to our Canadian group. I really appreciate all that you've shared with us, and it's always great to get insight from other wool industries and the particular sort of opportunities and challenges that you see. I also want to thank everyone who's joined us here today. We've had a really great cross section, some amazing questions. I see just in front of me, obviously, people who are involved on our policy committee, like Sasha and Jane, one of our supporters, Liz. We've got Carol, who is a board member, but also involved with IWTO work. I made the mistake of naming people now, and I'm going to miss some. But we had some great media participating as well. I see Randy from Sheep Canada magazine, as well as Diana. Wave from Fiber Mill, who was at the roundtable with you in Montreal. But again, thank you everyone for participating. The Spinning Yarn Seeker series was created at your request to shed more light on the work that we're doing on behalf of Canadian wool, while also learning from our partners around the world. So thank you again, everyone, for participating, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session in October, which is Wool Month. So it'll be a very special one. So thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you.